Hello, everybody. This is going to be a quick demo on the for each loop. It's a nice feature in Java, and you should use it whenever you can, except when you can't. And so we'll discuss when you can in future videos. But for right now, I have this array with Fred, George, and Ron in it. And we're going to print out each item in the array on a line. And then we're going to do the same thing with an iterable in a minute. And so what I want you to imagine is that the first how to use this this feature is like you would say for string text in some array, run this, right? You'll see that right away this preferring the for each loop over the for I loop, it's working, and you can see it's printing out everybody. You can use the exact same code in an iterable version, right? And so like if you pass in an iterable, the for each loop also works for those. So like whether you have an array or an iterable item, and some of the things you might be familiar with that are iterable, like list and set and stuff like that, are all iterable. Powers of two, which you will build in this class. All those things can be sort of passed in here, and you can just iterate through them this way. Now, the argument that I'm going to make is that this is an improvement or preferred to things that people are often familiar with, which is the old for I loop, which is I less than for I equals 0, I less than texts, or excuse me, array.length plus I. And it might not seem much worse, right? But when you build a more complicated system, both of these work, right? This is a correct program right here that I've changed it into. It produces the same output. It works like a charm. What I'll argue is that this one is cleaner. Now, for this particular very simple program, it might not seem that big of a deal, but for more complicated programs, every little bit of clarity you can provide helps, and this is just a cleaner program. Down here in the print lines iterable, what people can do is sort of a very equivalent program is make an iterator from our iterable object. So let's call it iterator. Creates one while that iterator let's say now it would be string text equals iterator next. And now I can sys out text. And this is also a perfectly fine and correct program. I would argue that it's just cleaner to build it this way, right? And so again, every little bit of clarity you can provide, do that. A bonus one is like sometimes people will have this, like the even worse version is someone has some print lines on a list or some collection. Right? Let's take this. There's a list of strings. And this is where sometimes things get, sort of even worse, is what people will do is you can do this exact same program, like list is iterable. So let's call it down here. Instead of doing this guy, let's just make this guy, we know it's a list, so let's make it a list. Call it list. And let's pass this in here. And let's print Lynn's list here. Should have probably copied it, but here we go, right? And so, this works just the same way that the one with iterable works because list is a collection which is iterable. So it's a perfectly valid iterable. It works in the for each loop. Everything's good. But what you'll see sometimes people do is they'll take this version, right, and say, oh, I've got a list, and they won't use the for each loop, which is again sad because it's nice. And so they'll be like, oh, I know how to use this. I will go like for I equals this to list dot size, and say, oh, list dot get I. Again, like if I comment out this nicer version with the for each loop, this will also work, right? This is a perfectly fine program. Well, it's perfectly fine. It's correct. I would argue that this one is cleaner. And again, this is a very simple program, and so it might not seem as big of a deal, but every little bit of clarity you can provide is worth it. And so definitely always just use the for each loop whenever you can. We're going to have some videos later that show when you can't. And so when you can't use it, don't use it, or it's not the appropriate tool. But most of the time, the grand vast majority of the time, we should be just using the for each loop like this.